This is now the 5-minute tarot for the 11th of March 2017, and I'm calling this one, What's the Right Way to Do a Reading? Partly because Renee in Wisconsin, I think, sent me an email with a couple of questions about how do you navigate the emotional space between the reader and the querent? What's the right way to go about maybe establishing a connection or a contact with the person? Because you've got the reader who knows a certain amount and has certain ideas about what the tarot can do. And you've got the questioner who may be nervous, they may be doubtful, they may not want to be there, they may be overexcited, they may be expecting way too much. And you've got all these different types of people and questioners. So how do you set up a decent relationship, I think a connection in the beginning? So the next bit of what, I've got this on screen here, she said, let's say the querent is basically a stranger or a party acquaintance. What questions are appropriate to ask while not infringing too much on their privacy or their boundaries? All right, so when we, I'm not quite sure what she means by what questions can you ask. Sometimes you need to ask certain questions. I mean, it can be if there's, I find if there's a person involved, I want to know the person's name because it's easier to say Bob or Mary instead of this person or that person. So I think it's okay to ask for questions that make it easier to give an answer. But I don't know if there's any particular rule that we should follow, apart from the fact that everybody's different. Questions are to questioners. And I think that we ought to let them do what they want. And if they ask a question, we should answer that question, even if it's not one that we would ask, or if it's not one that we would like. So somebody wants to know, will I get married? Just tell them yes or no. And how and why and when and what to expect. And, you know, there are ways around it. Instead of trying to turn it into a question like, what I mentioned this before, what can I do to improve my chances of marriage? So I think if we go into the reading thinking, okay, I'm the reader, I'm adaptable, I can look at a card and use it to answer a question about business or work or relationships or you know, how to live properly or how to live in harmony with the self. So I can answer any question. And the questioner comes to the table, so to speak, with certain ideas, a certain information that they want. And I think it's up to the reader to just answer the question. But Renee goes on and went on to say, I've had some querents flat out tell me their main life problems, right? And some people will like to talk, but others are reserved and say very little or nothing. So do you always make them tell you their question? And I normally say, if I say to people, tell me your question or questions, and then I write them down, because sometimes you'll find they've got half a dozen questions, but there's really just one or two two things they want to know about. The other questions are related to the first one, let's say. So I think it's a good idea to say to people, tell me your question or questions. And with email readings that I do, I say, send me your list of questions and give me as much or as little background information as you want. And I leave it up to them. Some people explain about what's been happening and what they're hoping for and what didn't work the last time, for instance. Other people just say, you know, will I ever meet someone? And that's their question. And then, so for me, I like to know the question because, as I've said many times, the meaning of the card really depends on the question. So Renee asked as well, do I always make them tell me the question? I say, tell me your questions. If they don't have a question, then I don't demand or insist on a question, because it's their time, they're paying. It's up to them to use the time the way that they want or the way they're comfortable with. If they don't have a question, do you give them homework? I'm not quite sure what Renee means by that. or do you give them a general advice reading anyway? If they don't have a question, okay, I like to begin by asking them to pick a number between 1 and 9 and a number between 0 and 22. And then I discuss and tell them about the major trumps that they chose. So 6 and 16, or 6 and 12, whatever the numbers happen to be. I take out or show them the two major trumps with those numbers, and I talk about them because it gives us both an idea of their current situation and what's coming up in the immediate future. So if they don't have a question and you get them to give you a couple of numbers and start the reading by talking about the major trumps, that may trigger a question or two. But also it gives the questioner confidence that you know what you're talking about, or that the tarot is legitimate and valid. Because if somebody can sit there and say, okay, I pick 6 and 19, and you say, okay, with 6 as the lovers, you're at crossroads in your life, and it's important that the decisions that you make now, you're going to have to live with the results of those decisions. And they're going to sit there and they're going to think, how did they know that? Because that's what's going on. When people choose the number 6, they are at a crossroad. Or if they choose the number 1, you talk about how they've got high hopes and expectations, and they're creative and they want to do a lot, and it's time for a fresh start, and they should write a book. And you talk about the meaning of the magician. And it gives the questioner confidence in you and confidence in the tarot. And I think that's how you navigate the emotional space. You have a method which is find out the questions, write them down, get the question to pick 2 numbers, talk about them, and then you've got a foundation to build on when you answer the particular questions. Because if somebody says 6 and 16, so they're at crossroads and they have to be careful because it's time for a fresh start, represented by the results of the people falling out of the tower, right? So if they choose 6 and 16 and they want to know about getting a new job, am I going to get a promotion, for instance? You talk about the promotion against the background of being at crossroads and having to make a fresh start, so that they have certain ideas about what a promotion means, but you can discuss what they actually want and what they're looking for, and maybe it's time for a change. The tower can indicate that they're bored or tired or fed up where they are, and that's why they want the promotion, that's why they want the change. But because change, represented by the tower, can be upset and disruption and damage, it's going to be useful for the questioner to think about why they want change and what's going on. And maybe the point is you're better to stay where you are and fix what's wrong, or fix what you don't like, or come to terms with it. Because if you don't fix it now, you're going to take it with you into the next position. If you've got a problem that you don't want to face, it's going to keep coming back into your life one way or the other until you solve it, or until you face it and deal with it. Then you've got a chance of it disappearing because you've had the courage to actually do something about it. But if you avoid certain things, it just comes back to haunt you. So with 6 and 16 and a job promotion, it gives you the background against which to answer the question about the promotion. So if they don't have a question, pick the numbers, or get them to pick the numbers and talk about the numbers, and then do a past, present, and future. Pick 3 cards. This is you in the past, this is you now, and this is you in the future. That's it for the moment. I don't know about tomorrow, but hope you enjoyed that. And if you have comments or questions, let me know. Okay, bye-bye.